Tough question. It's a very good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to it, but I'll try. Because I've sat, both being a chief executive and being a non-executive director of other public companies. And first of all, I would say, as a non-executive director, you have a fraction of the information that an executive director has, or particularly a chief executive. So you might try and sort of bluff your way through it in a board meeting, but the executive directors do hold a lot of most of the cards. So the board, I would say, is very, very important in terms of agreeing not, I don't think, formulating, but agreeing the strategy of the company. It's very important on monitoring the finances of the company and making sure that you have whatever financial housekeeping rules that you've set are being achieved. It's very important in terms of keeping the company's eye on maybe issues which aren't so commercially apparent or priorities to management. For example, a pension fund deficit. Last time I looked with Whitbread, it was about 400 million. These are big numbers. And so that's the board. The decision-taking forums, I think, again, I would go back to saying as close as possible to the customer. The fewer decisions that used to get referred up to me, the better.
Yeah, I think in my experience, kind of a similar sort of thing. The board is there to really support the strategy. They're clearly not developing, and you've got to make sure that you're presenting the right information at the right time, so the boards can then collectively make the decision to reinforce the strategy or the direction we're going. I think the role today for boards and non-execs is certainly becoming more onerous. They have to put more time in. They still can only spend a limited amount of time. But the more information you can give them, the more preparation you can give them. I've actually taken some of the non-execs to meet customers just to give them a feel for as much as I can of the business. It becomes much easier then to make decisions at board meetings, when they've got some context around it. But more often than not, they're there to reinforce and ask the right questions again and maybe bring a different perspective, because if you've got the right board makeup, they can bring a very different perspective to the discussion. I think sometimes we get very blinkered, we're away. You need someone who's coming from a very different industry or different group just to step in and ask the right sort of questions again.
David, do you want to say something?
Well, I mean, I would agree with what's been said. I think, they're non-executive directors. Don't bring them executive decisions. Don't serve them up stuff that should be decided in the organization. And the biggest problem I can have is if my board starts to weigh in on executive decisions. That can create an issue within the company. So it's very important to have a good chairman who can help the board understand where they weigh in versus where they don't. And as Alan said, they endorse strategy. We recommend a strategy that we as the executive believe, and then the independent people ask critical questions, and then they either endorse it or they don't. Hopefully they endorse it. And the same with checking the finances. They can't. If I walk in with 6 months of lousy numbers, they can't change the finances. They know there's a problem. They got to understand what the issue is, and they have to satisfy themselves that things are being done to deal with it. But ultimately, as Alan said, you're the CEO. But that's my point about the board. I think then as the CEO, you've got to understand where you want to take your board, and you don't want them to weigh in on stuff they shouldn't be weighing in on, because they are independent. They ask good questions, but they, in the end, they walk out of the room and go back to work, and you're there to do the jobs.
Yeah. I think that's an extremely good story, if I may say so. I am fortunate enough to have retired as a chief executive. That's only about 50% of chief executives do that.
That means...
Look at
Wow! Okay. We're going to beat the odds, or who goes next, Garrett?
Newsflash. You heard it here first.